Good morning. Welcome to the Circle. Welcome to be in this place, just as you find yourself today. Whether you're grumpy or grateful, happy or sad, tired or rested, peaceful or anxious, hopeful or discouraged, angry or accepting, or all the shades we find ourselves in between. We come in the freedom of this land and in the freedom of this place without fear, where we're free to be, free to question, free to express ourselves. And we come in deep gratitude for the long witness of this land on which we gather. We come mindful of the story, the spirituality, the cultures of our Cree peoples, who've made their home here for generations and generations. And as we gather, we honor the gifts of our Métis neighbors. And we gather with respect for our responsibilities as partners of Treaty 6 and our responsibilities to be a good neighbor. We cast this circle today with each other, knowing that somehow, deep in our hearts, we share common longings, common visions, common hopes, common dreams. We are a generous people. We're a kind and caring people.
Sometimes we are hurtful in our speech and our actions.
We're a justice-seeking people.
But sometimes we are complicit in injustice by our silence and by our actions.
We're a compassionate people. We're a people who seek to live our highest values and bring our best humanity to the circles in which we live. Moments take on a significance for us that we couldn't always imagine at the time. Decisions shape us in ways we didn't foresee. Small acts we do turn out to mean the world to someone and make a world of difference to them. It's easy for us to fail to see the impact that we make. The significance of a conversation, a simple kindness, a generous gesture. As we light this candle this day, we seek to call forth that place within us where simple acts, small words, kind gestures come from the brightness of the Spirit within us, a place we seek to live from each day. And why it is that we pray with one another, seeking to strengthen our intentions to live more nearly as we pray. Offering words that are shared at each Sunday gathering at West Hill United Church in Scarborough, Ontario, with them and within ourselves and with each other, we pray together. As I live every day, I want to be a channel for peace. May I bring love where there is hatred, and healing where there is hurt, joy where there is sadness, and hope where there is fear. I pray that I may always try to understand and comfort other people, that I may also seek comfort and understanding from them. Wherever possible, may I choose to be a light in the darkness, a help in times of need, and a caring, honest friend. And may justice, kindness, and peace flow through my heart forever. Amen. We've all had them, those experiences where someone has shared a kindness with us. Sometimes it's those random acts of kindness, and sometimes it's just truly the kind response to a moment in which we find ourselves. So I wanted to invite us this morning just to take a few moments to think about those experiences of kindness that we have had in our lives, whether they are unexpected or just the most natural response. We have been the recipients of someone's kindness. I want to give us just a few moments to think about those experiences in our lives. And if there are a few people who have a brief experience that they would like to share with us, I want to give you an opportunity to do that. An experience of kindness. Joanne.
A neighbor brought a basket of raspberries to us this past week, and they were delicious as we put them on our cereal.
Fruit of the season. Estelle.
I was at the grocery store one day, and the guy in front of me needed
a few more dollars in order to get some kind of special. So he said, oh, I'll buy hers. And the cashier said, so like, you know, $10 worth? He said, no, I'll buy them all. So it was like $80 that he paid for my groceries.
My mom is 93, just had a birthday, and my sister out of Kelowna realized that she needed attention, and all of us in the family feel that heaviness of, you know, mom's gotten older and stuff. She emails at 7 o'clock almost every day about the things she eats and where she's going, and plans her day, and my mom reads these things sacredly.
My favorite memory of kindness occurred when I was early in my 20s and a young graduate, and only had a couple of paychecks in the bank, and then I heard there was going to be a nurses' strike, and I was in a panic, and I wondered what I was going to do. And I went to mail a letter to my parents, and the owner of the drugstore where I mailed it said, well, don't worry, dear. If something happens, we'll find a job for you here to cover your rent. And years later, that same lady I ran into again in a professional sense, and she had dementia, and she was telling her doctor, I've never done anything worthwhile in my life. And I said, aha, but I know something you did.
We could share stories of kindness all day, and I hope that you'll give thought to them throughout the day. But I'm going to invite Chris to take us into a song where we sing about many of our life experiences, including experiences of kindness.
Thank you for indulging us in learning a new song and helping us to do that with your voices. This is a song setting to the words of John Wesley Oldham, and it's really quite simple to learn. It's kind of four phrases, and you'll get the hang of it, but I'm going to sing it through the first verse once, and then if you join me on the first verse again. There is a sense of mystery when life and death combine, when joy and sorrow claim our hearts, we know we're intertwined. There is a sense of harmony when peace transforms our pain, and we rise up to take a stand for justice to be gained. There is a sense of mystery when life and death combine, when joy and sorrow claimed our hearts, we know we're intertwined. There is a sense of harmony, and we rise up to take a stand for justice to be gained. There is a solidarity in being family kin, while varied in so many ways, we are the same heartfelt integrity, when kindness is our song, and we affirm a sacred truth, in love we all belong. There is a continuity with voices of the past, inspiring us to venture on as hope remains our task. There is a sense of liberty when strength sustains the soul, and we live out compassion's way in quest for peace our goal. This is a reading entitled In Praise of Small Kindnesses by Cyril Liv-Miron. Today's is a soft meditation in praise of the enormousness of small kindnesses. Like the cafe worker who waved enthusiastically to my father as he walked in the door of the coffee shop, like she was expecting him, like he was a regular in this hipster enclave instead of a septuagenarian in khaki shorts and white tennis shoes. He met me here on my work day so I could help him format a document, something he couldn't figure out how to do at home, no matter how many buttons he tried, something my mother always did for him in the decades after he gave up his trusty typewriter. So we arrived at the coffee shop vulnerable and exasperated in that way that only technology can make us feel, like slow, dependent children, and sorely missing my mother. Like the barista who didn't blink when he ordered his coffee the wrong way, when he said latte instead of latte, who took his order from our table as if we were in a sit-down restaurant and she was our waiter, who smiled the whole time like a halo of warm light, softening the space everywhere, who made him feel like he belonged. You cannot know how those small gestures matter unless you are him, unless you are me watching, unless you see his shoulders relax in that way that we can do only when we feel safe and seen enough to let go. And his eyes dampen, the tiny liquid pools held in at the rims, barely noticeable, as he smiles and he says, "She always knew how to do this for me. For years she did this. How I miss her." This is the insight of a contemporary writer.
a story by a contemporary writer, Sharon Salzberg, entitled Your 3 Feet of Influence. As Frank went down the stairs and through the turnstile at a station of the New York subway, he thought about what he was bringing with him that morning. He'd had a fight with his girlfriend. He faced a difficult meeting when he got to work. His back was hurting again and his steps were jagged. Along with the anxiety about the morning news, he recognized how cranky he was and that he was just spoiling for a fight to let some of this loose. As it turns out, he was also bringing a book he was reading, a book I'd written called Loving Kindness. There were big crowds on the platform. There'd been some snafu, and 3 packed trains passed his station without stopping to the cheers of others on the platform. He was angry that, through no fault of his own, he would be late for work. Finally, a train stopped, and he maneuvered through the crowd at the door. He saw it was packed, and rowdy middle schoolers were on a field trip. They were boisterous and physical. He turned up the volume on his headphones to try to drown them out. At the next stop, a woman holding 2 heavy bags in one hand and a child's hand in the other pulled the little girl through the crowd to the pole where Frank was standing. Immediately, she berated him, saying he was taking up too much space, his big hand was blocking out too much of the pole, and how did he expect her little girl to get a grip? Frank wanted to bark at her, but instead he paused to take her in. Likely she would be even later getting to work than he. She had to drop this child off at school or daycare. Literally, she was carrying a heavy burden, 2 of them. And objectively, the transit system was frustrating them all. You know, you're right, Frank said, and he moved his hand a little higher. Sorry about that. One of the students careened Frank from behind, right at the tender spot in his back. And again, his first impulse was to yell at the boy, tell him to watch where he was going. But Frank looked at him before he spoke and saw genuine concern in the boy's face when Frank winced from the pain in his back. "Hey, buddy, slow down," he said with a smile. "The train's crowded." Sorry, the boy said. "What's the book you're reading?" He said, "It's a book about how to be kinder to each other." The boy said, "They write books about stuff like that?" Think of the difference if Frank had acted on his first impulse. He'd be glowering at the woman and the child, and likely the woman would be staring back at him with the same fury while the child looked confused and frightened. He would have had the boy feeling guilty and clumsy. And instead, the space around Frank was calmer because he'd paused to act before adding to the friction. He'd done his part, not to enhance the misery in that 3 feet around his body, those 3 feet that were his to influence. Very few people are powerful enough, persuasive, persistent, consistent, charismatic enough to change the world all at once. But everyone has the ability to affect the 3 feet around them by acting more honestly, ethically, and compassionately. So just picture it. If more people acted from this space of love, more and more terrain would be covered. This is the insight of a contemporary writer.
This is an excerpt from Genesis chapter 50, starting at verse 15. And in the world of this ancient story, after Joseph was reunited with the brothers who had deeply betrayed, who had felt deeply betrayed by him, the years go by and the story continues with the death of their father. Realizing that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers said, "What if Joseph still bears a grudge against us and pays us back in full for all the wrong that we did to him?" So they approached Joseph, saying, "Your father gave this instruction before he died. Say to Joseph, 'I beg you, forgive the crime of your brothers and the wrong they did in harming you.'" Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also wept, fell down before him, and said, "We're as your servants." But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. I myself will provide for you and your children." In this way he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. In this legendary story of an ancient family, may we find wisdom for our lives.
I've been thinking a lot about the litany of kindnesses I've received in my recent experience of my father's death. And as I've thought through those experiences, my mind has been flooded with memories of a cousin who brought me a toothbrush at the end of a long hospital day with the gentleness of her presence. And another who brought me my favorite coffee after a long night beside my father's bedside. And another who appeared at just the right moment, taking time out of her workday to come and share with me some childhood memories we had of our fathers. And a partner who took care of things at home before catching the last connecting flight to Moncton in the middle of the night. And friends who sacrificed a night's sleep at great cost and inconvenience to cross the country to be at my dad's memorial service. And another who sent flowers that created beauty in the space that we were continually making empty as we dismantled my father's household. And then so many of you who emailed or called or sent beautiful cards to express your support, and all of you who kindly remembered us. Friends who cared for our home and the animals we make our home with. Extended family who provided new homes for my dad's furnishings. A colleague who wrote new lyrics for a song to a tune of an old hymn that we could sing at my father's service. A coworker who prepared the order of service. A friend who offered strawberries and cheese and her presence at just the right time as I entered my life here again. And this is just to name a few. I could take the reflection time this morning to continue to offer litanies of kindness. But through the lenses of that experience, this ancient story Chris read a segment from a moment ago, this legend of Joseph's family opens to me in a new way. I've always heard it as a story of forgiveness, a story of reconciliation that's rooted in a radical act of forgiveness. But I've often missed the simple kindness to which the editor gives just one line near the end of the tale when he adds that Joseph spoke kindly to his brothers. There's no end of cruelty in this story. As you may remember, it begins with the cruelty of favoritism. In a badly blended family, Joseph is the apple of his father's eye, and his brothers would like to make applesauce of him. And his father exacerbates the situation by exempting Joseph from manual labor, the manual labor that the others carry out diligently each day. And then Joseph deepens the resentment by coming to the breakfast table every single morning to share his dreams of being in some grandiose position of power where his brothers have to bow down to him. So not surprising, when the opportunity presents itself and they're far from their father's watchful eye, they hatch a plot to get rid of this guy. But at the last moment, one of the more enterprising brothers saw an opportunity to make a buck and still get rid of Joseph. So he persuaded the others to sell him instead of killing him. So they cash him in with some traders that are on their way to Egypt, and then they soak his very distinctive coat in animal blood to support the tragic story they're going to go back and tell their father, that Joseph was killed by some wild animal. And the years go by, and their father grieves. And their secret remains safe because not one single one of them will break the code of silence, even though they watch their father's heart break every day, day after day, year after year. Meanwhile, Joseph's been sold again by the traders to some high-ranking official in Egypt, and things go well for him for a while till he's propositioned by his employer's wife and declines her advances. She doesn't just get angry, she gets even. She tells her husband that Joseph had solicited her affections. And so in the great world of melodrama, that's how Joseph ends up in prison. But of course, in any good story, he has cellmates who have an in with the Pharaoh. And so Joseph, whose skillfulness not only in remembering his own dreams, but interpreting the dreams of others, is able to interpret the Pharaoh's worst nightmares. And that good fortune earns him early release. And Joseph not only gains his freedom, but like a Mandela of the ancient world, he rises to political power. And in an unbelievable twist of the kind good stories are made of, hunger brings his brothers to Egypt in the hope that they'll find food to feed their growing families. And now, that moment that the storyteller prepared us for in the opening scene, like any good Hollywood movie does, that little innocuous scene at the breakfast table, where Joseph shared his dreams about being powerful as he passed the cereal, we return to that motif as the story reaches its climax. The plot has now given Joseph the upper hand, not only because he has the power to supply the food they need, but he has the advantage of recognizing them, whereas they don't have the first clue that they're actually seeking the help of the brother they betrayed and brutalized and had safely assumed he was dead. It's an occasion we've witnessed so many times in our history. When the tables are turned and what happens next is entirely up to the victim. And it took time, and it took tears. It didn't happen all at once, and it didn't happen without great grief, and it wasn't as pure as the driven snow. He didn't just look into their eyes and forgive them. There was no instant kindness. He accused them of being spies. He put them in prison for 3 days. He secretly put money back in their sacks and made them worry they'd be accused of theft. He kept one brother in custody in order to force the others to return with his only full brother, his youngest brother, Benjamin, who hadn't come with them. And then when they return with Benjamin, he sets them up again by framing Benjamin for stealing in order to force them to bring their father to Egypt to be reunited with him. He conceals his identity. He grieves in private. He tormented them until something moved him to a higher humanity, until something made him rebel with kindness. Maybe it was self-preservation. Maybe he began to recognize that he was doing more damage to his own soul than he was to his family. In slow, incremental movements, he releases his resentment and reveals himself to his brother and reinstates himself in a family that had rejected him, and he arranges to be reunited with his father, and he provides the opportunity for his brothers not only to survive, but to thrive. And that fragile forgiveness could have unraveled the day their father died. And their brothers began to fear that in the absence of pleasing their father, Joseph might retaliate and return cruelty for cruelty and repay hatred for hatred. So they're never without a scheme or a lie in their back pocket, so they play the very best card in their deck and claim that their father on his deathbed wanted them to plead with Joseph to make sure that he met his father's expectations and forgive them. Whether Joseph saw through it, whether he saw through the charade or he bought it hook, line, and sinker doesn't really matter. For whatever reason in the world of the story, he gave them his good intentions, and he let go of the past. And after many tears were shed, he spoke kindly to them. Kindness isn't always easy, and it's very often inconvenient. And it's sometimes a rebellion against our first instincts, and it's usually a choice. Because to speak or act kindly takes intention. And it requires an element of risk, whether our offer will be received or rejected, valued or not noticed. Kindness isn't a very sexy virtue. And in a culture that's addicted to immediate responses, it's sometimes a radical act to actually take time to consider how we could speak kindly without sacrificing honesty. In a culture that's consumed with self-interest and self-care, it's sometimes a radical act to initiate kindness. In a culture that celebrates being cool, it's easy to mistake being nice with being kind. A 5-year-old was talking with her babysitter about her favorite sitcom. And in her favorite sitcom, the protagonist in the story is portrayed as a sweet, morally upstanding A student. And of course, the character who's cast as this one's best friend is a rebellious and rude and sarcastic counterpoint. So when the babysitter asked the child which was her favorite character, the little girl said simply, "The cool one," which is to say, the one that the writers and the producers of the show know garners the most admiration from the audience, the one who has no time for kindness because she's in the pursuit of coolness. Have we missed the point that being nice is not the same thing as being kind? The etymology of our language gives us a really big clue that kindness wraps itself around kin. That kindness has something, maybe everything, to do with treating one another as we would treat our kin, as we would treat our kind, as we would treat ourselves. But kindness takes mindfulness. Paying attention to our words, taking time to consider what another might need, where they might be coming from, what they're reacting to or responding to, what load they're carrying that's invisible to us. And risking offering something that might put us in a position we'll be taken advantage of or rejected, or with a simple gesture or word or deed make the world of difference for someone in a moment that will become a lifetime. Joseph's story reminds us that none of us do it perfectly. But something in that story reminds us that kindness is so basic, so elemental to what it is to be human. Because we're all baristas and commuters. We all live in those mundanely sacred moments of life where few of us are in positions of power to change the world, but each of us is positioned to practice kindness in the spaces we inhabit, whether we're young or old. We have what's needed to change the world just a meter at a time. It's called kindness. It's simple, but it's not easy. As we take our leave of this circle, we move into all those circles where we have a meter of influence, where we can extend at least 3 feet of kindness around us, in the circles we move in our families, among our friends, where we volunteer, where we work, the places where we take our place in the world. And we take that light of kindness as we go with one another this day.
Our closing song is entitled, "We Will Sing Through Our Tears." If you would sing the refrain after I do, and then we'll sing a verse, and I'll sing a verse, and then you'll sing a verse, and then by then we'll be on our way, and we'll continue singing. Through our tears, we will dance through our pain. We will will know joy and grief and join in life's refrain. We will sing through our tears, we will dance through our pain. We will know joy and grief and join in life's refrain. Verse 1. When our sighs become our song, when our crying becomes rain, when our fears transform to hope, we will rise to sing again. When our sighs become our song, when our crying becomes rain, when our fears transform to hope, we will rise to sing again. We will sing through our tears, we will dance through our pain. We will know joy and grief and join in life's refrain. We will sing through our tears, we will dance through our pain. We will know joy and grief and joy in life's refrain. When we grieve 1,000 deaths, when we face uncertainty, when we grow through times of stress, we will build community. We will sing through our tears, rebuild through our pain. We will know joy and grief and join in life's refrain. We will sing through our tears, we will dance through our pain. We will know joy and grief and joy in life's refrain. When we know love in our heart, when we live compassion's way,